I'm Dr. Kori Propst here with Dr. Joe Klemczewski. Welcome to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. We're in our fitness entrepreneur segment today, and we're discussing self-direction. This is a big topic, Joe, especially for business people, and and I think people who have big goals, big minds, and who really want to accomplish a lot in what they would say is not enough time.
Yeah, so it is such a big topic, Kori, that it got me out of bed last night just to jot some notes down. I was done reading, put my book and my phone away, and was going to sleep, and I had to get back up and write some stuff down. I was so excited and so hit by something I had read. Uh-huh. But I thought, as much time as we spend kind of planning out the directions we're going to go with our podcast, sometimes that's not the case. We just say, wow, this is an important thing. We need to preempt our planning and get this topic out there. So I really did start to title this thing Massive Action, but we've talked about that before.
I think we have one called that, actually.
Exactly. So as I started filling out kind of the points that I wanted to discuss, I thought, this really does talk about self-direction, about, somebody who's really taking the bull by the horn, so to speak. And I know I've told this story before, but at the school I went for writing, got my MFA in creative and professional writing. Yeah. They invited me back a couple times to teach workshops and lectures on the business of art. That's what I always titled my stuff, because with all of the poets and nonfiction writers and fiction writers and all the people there who are creatives, there aren't that many of us who are type A analytical people. So I'm kind of this weird enigma to them. So they often want me to talk about that. How, Joe, help us be more organized, help us do this. And so the very first time I taught this class to graduate students, writers, there were probably 40 or 50 people in this room. The title was The Business of Art. I didn't know that this question would have this much impact, but I just asked, how many of you here have your own author websites? And out of the entire room, even other professors and visiting writers, only 2 people raised their hands.
Wow. Yeah.
2 people. So here's what's interesting. Years later, guess which 2 people have the biggest book contracts and have been published in more journals, etc.
The people with the exposure, with the website. Yeah.
So is it the fact that they had a website? Of course not. That was more of a symptom of their ability to self-direct, to be ahead of the curve, to say, I'm not going to wait for somebody to knock on my door. I've got to go out there and create my own opportunity.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about how were the other 48 people thinking, and what were they thinking about or not thinking about, and what were their goals. But I'm sure we're going to kind of get into the mindsets that differentiate self-directed people versus smart.
I will tell you, I saw a lot of pens hit paper at that point. So, the thing is, it's a mistake I think we all make, because when you love what you do, and in the fitness industry, those of us who, maybe in the allied health field, to the medical field, to personal fitness, nutrition, we all love to be with people. We all love to take care of them. We have more of a nurturing component where we want to help them and help them feel better and improve their health. And so, writers and creatives are the same. They're busy working on their craft. They want to write, they want to create. And so it is so antithetical to anything inside of their brain to go through the rigid mechanical steps of selling, to pitching, to doing all of these other things that have to be done so that your work can be in the world.
Consumed by the masses. Yeah. That's their ultimate goal.
And I see the same thing even in our company. When I look at our program owners, I've learned if there's anything I can pre-qualify people with as a concept, is that if somebody is inquiring to us, how do I become a Diet Doc license owner, a program owner, we start going through, what they're doing now, what's your history, what are your goals. When I see somebody who's an absolute business tiger, somebody who they're extroverted and they have these goals, and I can see that they've already been using those skills in other areas. I'm like, wow, this person, we just have to let them loose and they're going to succeed.
So on that thought, would you say that self-directedness is more of a resource for someone who is extroverted as opposed to has more introverted tendencies?
It absolutely comes easier. There's no question about that. But those of us, like me, who are introverted, I would say I got lucky at some points in my career, making the right decisions, knowing the right people, being asked to do the right things from writing to speaking. Otherwise, I could have been exactly the same. And I still am to some degree. It's probably my biggest challenge is that I don't like social media and these kind of things. If you and I weren't talking right here, I would not have any video presence in the world, because for me to just set up a camera and talk would not happen.
I think that's how you and I as business partners have gotten a lot done. Like, can we challenge each other together to do the things that are most uncomfortable for both of us?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But so is that self-directedness though, or is it motivation guided by connection with people who we know can challenge us?
Well, interesting segue there, Kori, because it's, that can be something that comes naturally to you, or it can be something that you consider awful, but we still have to channel that from both ends of that continuum. So somebody can be just a great extroverted, sales-oriented type person and still not have the right content, the right planning, the right temperament. To do the right things. So you could be. Yeah. So, one of the points I wanted to make about those two particular authors who did quite well, they were also absolute studs and studette in their field that they were trying to write through. So, one of them, I mentioned him all the time. My friend Brian, who was the chief of homicide in Oakland and was a lieutenant colonel in the Army and in intelligence and had done tours overseas during the Iraq War. This guy had spent an entire career in law enforcement, and so now he's writing crime thrillers.
So he
makes a lot of sense, right?
Huge body of work.
Absolutely.
And application and experience to draw from. Okay.
Right. And the other person who said, yes, I have an author website, she was a poet who, that was her whole world, man. When you talk to her about her stories and her life experiences, you can see that dark poetry side just emanating out from her. And like I said, she's now been published in some of the greatest poetry journals. But think in our industry, how many people want to be a part of fitness, and yet you would have to look through their CV or their experience base and say, well, what have you really done of note? Do you know more than some people in some niche because you've really created that experience, or you've gone to school for this many years and done that? Right. Or, if you haven't, that's the first place to start. You need to create some depth. You can work on the business side, but you also have to create depth of knowledge, depth of experience in what you actually want to teach, so you make yourself valuable. That's incredibly self-directed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. And I see that a lot with especially our owners who are really excelling. They have a good understanding of what sets them apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
capitalize on.
I mentioned a couple recent studies in the Harvard Business Review. One was, this is a little bit of an older one, but we talked about this on another podcast, that people who tend to succeed in any area of business have the most open networks, meaning they have a broad amount of contact points with other people in their own industry, other industries. And so they have a lot of experience to draw upon and a lot of contacts that can help them be self-directed. You know, you're having other people feed into your life and your career. So I think that's incredibly important. And like I said, whether you're an extrovert or introvert, you still have to capitalize on that properly. The interesting study that I recently read, and I know I mentioned this another time, was that the two biggest factors in somebody's success in business were, number one, being open-minded. Mm-hmm. So just like we talked about that open, big network of people, mm-hmm. just being open-minded enough to evolve and change and predict how culture might shape and influence your own industry. But then, you know, the second part of that, which I thought was incredibly telling, is that it's not just about digging deeper and working harder. It's part of you being inside of communities that can do that together. You have this influence where it's almost like in self-determination theory, you have this competence where, you know, you want to be needed and people need you, and so you fit together very well. Those are very important skills where you find teams of people or a team to really work with toward that same goal.
Oh, Joe. Yeah. I would say that's the number one thing for me. Mm-hmm. I'm very persistent. I'm very consistent. You've said over and over again that I have the greatest amount of discipline and self-control out there. That's all true. But the tone of my work and the energy surrounding my work is so much lower, and it's almost more pessimistic if I'm not on a team doing that with people who are supporting and challenging me at the same time. That is the biggest thing for me. If I know that other people are relying on me in some way, or they're being impacted, or, you know, it's going to contribute to something other than, you know, my well-being, and it's all about me, that the tone, energy is completely different, and it's a lot more fun and galvanizing when there are other people involved and I feel connected.
And what's interesting about that is that works on every level. So as soon as you're with other people, it helps you see your role in your career from the ultimate end user's perspective, that client. So if it's just you working to acquire business and you're working from that almost one direction, when you have a team of people around you, you tend to look at, you know, hey, let's talk about our experience with the clients, with the customers. Mm-hmm. And so you really get this much more empathic response back and forth. You and your team you're working with, and we have that privilege with our staff and with our Diet Doc owners around the world. But then, you know, what we're always working on together, if you look at our owners forum and the conversations we have every day, it's always about the client experience. Mm-hmm. And that becomes the focus, and then the business just follows that.
Yeah. I think it really relates to, and hopefully people have by now seen your epic life project on social media, on Instagram at Joe Klemczewski, and you have it on Facebook too. But in one of your more recent posts, you talked about values and principles. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's an incredibly important thing to get in touch with and to reflect upon and to ask the tough questions around. What is important to me? What actually matters? Because if we haven't got that at least kind of somewhat pieced apart to where we understand it, nothing is necessarily going to land with as much intensity. And we're not going to be able to connect with the people in our tribe as well and make decisions as well. Because all of our choices and decisions ultimately come back down to, especially the hard ones, those values and principles and our mission and philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a perfect way to summarize this, in that self-direction, I mean, does have to come from within. Those are those intrinsic values, goals, the ambition you have. but we do that better with other people. We do that better when we're focused on our clients. And so appreciate that very much, Kori. And for you guys watching and listening, thanks again. We're going to be back with some coaching clinic work, probably some more motivational mastery with Dr. Propst here. So we appreciate you watching and listening, and we're going to catch you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.